Sega had found great success with the Genesis/Mega Drive, however the same could not be said about its following releases. The Sega CD was an interesting experiment, yet was held back by being an add-on for the Genesis, with not that impressive of a game lineup. Then the 32X attachment came out for it, which further exacerbated the issues the CD suffered from. Eventually, Sega would release a follow-up to the console called the Sega Saturn, their first console with a dedicated disc drive for playing games in 3D and higher fidelity. Unfortunately, due to a number of factors, the Sega Saturn never quite took off in the West like its predecessor did. What also did not help matters was its price and the lack of a killer app. In fact, where was Sonic? The Sega Saturn ultimately lacked a Sonic platformer where a planned title, Sonic Extreme, would ultimately not see the light of day. With these low sales, Sega of America and Sega of Europe requested a new Sonic game for the Genesis/Mega Drive. The Japan division decided to outsource development of the new title to UK-based studio Traveller's Tales. Traveller's Tales handled the art and programming, while the Sonic team did the game design and level maps. The title would take form and officially be dubbed Sonic 3D Blast or Sonic 3D Flickies Island if you're in the PAL and Japan regions. A new take on the Sonic formula, as this would be the series' first attempt at 3D gameplay. This new formula took inspiration from the Game Gear title Sonic Labyrinth with its isometric view and the cutting-edge pre-rendered 3D look Donkey Kong Country was able to achieve on the Super Nintendo. To make up for the cancellation of Sonic Extreme, the game was ported to the Sega Saturn and featured enhanced graphics along with a different style of special stage. The Genesis/Mega Drive version released on November 8, 1996, with the Saturn version releasing over a week later on November 14th. This game takes place on Flickies Island, where Dr. Robotnik was once again up to no good, capturing these mystical animals known as Flickies to turn them into robots to find the Chaos Emeralds for him. Sonic will explore a variety of zones taking place on different parts of the island with the goal of rescuing the Flickies. Each act is divided into different areas where you must defeat 5 badniks which free the Flickie trapped inside and transport it to the giant ring in that area. The game emphasizes exploration with Knuckles and Tails hidden in each act who can bring you to the special stage if you give them 50 rings. With a new gameplay style, graphics, and emphasis on exploration, was Sonic 3D a worthy game to close out its Genesis era? Was the game good or a misguided attempt at Sonic in 3D? Let's take a look at what worked in Sonic 3D with the good. One big issue I personally had with Sonic CD was its emphasis on exploration while you also had a time limit strapped to you, so I'm glad there is no time penalty in Sonic 3D. You can truly explore levels at your leisure and take the time to examine the environments for hidden secrets you may not have noticed. I also like how some areas make you think outside the box about how to reach them by using the level's mechanics. The levels also look very good no matter which version of the game you played. It was really pushing the Genesis graphics with the way it used the pre-rendered 3D graphics, which were easy on the eyes. The graphics in that version were great, but the Saturn version's graphics took it to the next level with added detail in the environments which gave each area a distinct look to it. Accompanying these graphics is the soundtrack, which sounds fantastic. Sonic games never miss a beat when it comes to their OST, and I'm happy to say it rings true to this game. The Genesis version's soundtrack is Genesis Sonic at its finest, with each act's music setting the mood so well. Interestingly enough, the Saturn version features an entirely different soundtrack from the Genesis version, where it feels like a complete follow-up to Sonic CD's soundtrack. Replacing the Genesis synth sounds is an assortment of different orchestral music with some background vocals for some pieces. It's such a great soundtrack that I feel goes unnoticed, so if you get the chance, give it a listen. Oh, there's also the Tiger Electronic version. Yeah, they made one for the Tiger Electronic. I'll just say it exists and leave it at that. While we're talking about the Saturn version, I like how it includes a map of the area in the pause menu that not only shows your location, but the location of any Flickies that may have gone missing during your playthrough of the act. I also like how the Saturn version has a different special stage from the Genesis version, since the Genesis version is pretty underwhelming in gameplay and design. The Saturn version is a rendition of Sonic 2's special stage, but now in full 3D since it was one of the assets left over from an early version of Sonic Jam. It definitely has better visuals than the Genesis version. However, these visuals can be a bit much and start to hold the Saturn version back. In fact, there are many things holding back Sonic's 3D ROM, so let's collect our lost Flickies in the bad. I haven't talked about how the game controls at all in the review so far. Well, the reason is that the controls feel very slippery in this game. Since Sonic is in an isometric view, you cannot go as fast as you could in his 2D games. There are times where Sonic feels like he wants to go fast, which starts to screw up how he handles in-game. Thankfully, the game doesn't make you do precise platforming until later in the game where you have to do a lot of precise platforming, which really begin to exacerbate this issue. The team really should have taken the controls into account when designing the later stages, as they can be frustrating to complete. Even worse is judging where Sonic will land after you jump with him, since the isometric camera can make you misjudge some jumps. It's even worse in the Saturn version, since the added detail of the ground combined with the weak drop shadow can make you misjudge jumps constantly. The screen crunch that the new perspective brings also does no favors, as it can hide traps and obstacles off screen, leaving you unprepared to dodge them. Adding to this frustration are the Flickies you have to collect. As I mentioned, each act has multiple areas you need to defeat badniks in and collect Flickies to transport to the giant ring in that area. Well, if you get hit while carrying Flickies, they scatter around in a panic, forcing you to go out of your way to collect them again along with your rings. This becomes a hassle in later stages when the obstacles and traps get in the way of collecting them. Heck, you don't even need to get hit for them to scatter. If they get hit by anything, they scatter, so you're forced to tread really lightly. Also, the red Flickie. I don't know who programmed this specific Flickie, but I can only assume they're a sadist since it's the only one that hops around making collecting it a pain. I mentioned how the Saturn version has better visuals, however they went overboard with them where some things in the stage, like Robotnik's air balloon and Spring Yard Zone, obscure the view for no reason. When you get hit in Sonic games, your rings get scattered around, giving you a chance to pick them up before they disappear. This is also true in this game, however the window for when rings disappear is so short you have no time at all to grab them before they disappear. This is especially frustrating during tough boss encounters where your rings can be vital, and having them disappear that fast during boss fights can lead to fast game overs. You can collect lives in the game, but for some reason the lives cap out at 9 lives. Why? Don't know. For some reason, instead of being able to collect as many lives as you want, you're capped at 9 in this game, so be sure not to die too much. I mentioned before that the special stages in the Genesis version were really underwhelming. This is due to the visuals looking weak along with the controls being slippery. Misjudging jumps becomes even worse in these stages since the platform shifts so much it can be hard to land where you want. Thankfully, you can cheese the special stage a bit by hugging the wall you need to jump over to get your bearings. Thankfully, the Saturn version special stages are different, but also contains issues. I mentioned how the visuals look better in this version, but this comes with the drawback that the visuals start to become too busy, which starts to obscure your view of the rings and spike bombs. Adding to this issue is how the special stage shifts around so much that you'll be left at a loss of where to go on the half pipe. It's especially worse during the uphill segments where Sonic's body obscures a good majority of the screen, leaving you at times unprepared for any incoming rings or obstacles. One last thing I want to bring up is that unlike the Genesis version, which allows you to level select stages after beating the whole game, the Saturn version does not. Not sure why that was left out along with the story setup the Genesis version features, though I suppose you could just look at the manual. Now with all that out of the way, let's jump into the opinion. Visually and music-wise, Sonic 3D is a nice way to cap off that era of Sonic video games. As a game in itself, it was painfully mediocre with its slippery controls and frustrating gameplay mechanics. It was a nice way to experiment with the formula in attempting to adapt the series to 3D, but falls short in many areas to truly recommend it. It starts off well enough, but drops off a cliff in later stages as the issues of the controls and camera of the game become more and more apparent. If you still wish to try the game, it's not the worst Sonic game out there, but you'll be in for some pain. If anything, just listen to the soundtracks on YouTube as they're an audio treat. So much so, some of them get a resurgence in later Sonic titles. And now, it's time for my rating. I would get Sonic 3D, this mine that I could not see that killed me twice, out of 10. Thanks for watching, and tune in for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, please check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.